Mike, how are you?
Thanks, Ron. All right, let's call this meeting to order. Welcome everybody to our workshop for today, February 5. For the record, all members of council are present with the exception of Ms. Hart. Ms. Hart called me and told me she had a bit of an accident in her house and fell over and wanted to be here via Zoom. And so if she can get her computer connected to her Wi-Fi, she's going to be on. She's not right now, but she will do everything she can to make that possible. So yeah, a Zoom meeting under our current rules say that it is the same as attending. So, and when somebody falls over and twists their back, we're going to have mercy on them, I would say. So welcome everybody. Also, staff members we got a couple here via Zoom. I saw Ms. Horner, Mr. Martin via Zoom, and then of course we've got our Public Works and our HR hero. Are you here as HR or are you here at finance? I keep getting that turned around in my, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so our items for discussion this evening, as you may remember, a couple of weeks ago, our agenda for this meeting looked a little bit different, but in light of a couple of things, the manager recommended that we change the agenda to meet some needs that we have. And so we did that. I agreed with her. And we're going to have some training on our open public meetings and parliamentary procedure and review of city council meeting procedure. And then we've got an executive session. And if there's time, we may have a discussion on one or two other things, but for the most part, we're going to stick with what we see on our paper. And it involves watching some videos. And I think there may be time for questions on that for clarification. If there's anything that's not quite clear in somebody's mind, we'll have opportunity to discuss that. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn this over to our city manager and we'll get things started.
Thank you, Mayor Boersma. I will turn it over to Jacqueline Renteria, City Clerk, and she will begin our Open Public Meetings Act training.
Okay, the first video is the OPMA, which is the Open Public Meetings Act training, and it's a video by Morgan Damrow, who's the Assistant Attorney General for Local Government Public Records Consultation with the Washington State Office of the Attorney General. Each council member has a printed certificate to sign and return to me, and I'm going to hit play.
This training provides an overview of the Public Meetings Act. It's intended for both the public and public agencies. Our purpose in this training is to provide a greater understanding of the legal requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act. The Act was passed in 1971, a time of a nationwide effort to make government affairs more accessible and more responsive. The purpose of the Act is to provide the public access to information concerning the conduct of state and local government. The law is based on the principle that open government is essential to our free society. The Open Public Meetings Act gives the people of Washington State the opportunity to witness the deliberations and decisions of government. More recently, that's included an opportunity to provide public comment as part of that process. Multi-member governing bodies, state and local agencies such as school boards, city and county councils, and the state commission must comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. The law states that it is intended that the actions of these governing bodies be taken openly and that their deliberations be conducted in an open manner. Meetings subject to the Act must be open to the public, gavel to gavel, unless the law permits a meeting or part of that meeting to be public. Thank you for watching, and I hope you find this training informative. This training's purpose is to increase your knowledge of the Open Public Meetings Act. The OPMA is in Chapter 4230 of the RCWs, and this training incorporates updates from the 2022 legislative session. This training video contains 15 short segments. We just discussed Section 1, the history, and Section 2, the purpose of the Act. The remaining segments we will review the scope of the OPMA, what is a governing body, what is a meeting, what is action and final action, travel and gathering, regular meetings, special meetings, remote meetings. We'll also talk about executive sessions, public attendance and comment, minutes, liability, as well as other laws that provide some additional resources. The Act has several clear requirements, and compliance with them is improved with training. The difference between meeting your agency's OPMA obligation and extensive litigation. The act applies to governing bodies, multi-member public agencies, both state and local. At the state level, public agency includes state boards, commissions, committees, departments, educational institutions, or other state agencies, which is created by any form of statute. Public agency does not include the courts or the legislature. For local governments, public agency includes any county, city, school district, special purpose district, or other municipal corporation or political subdivision of the state of Washington. Examples of these include city councils, county councils, school boards, and fire district boards. Public agency may also include a sub-agency or public agency, which is created by or pursuant to statute, ordinance, or other legislative act. A good example of these includes planning commissions, library or park boards, or commissions. A final group is any policy group whose membership includes representatives of publicly owned utilities formed or pursuant to Washington laws when meeting together or as or on behalf of participants who have contracted for the output of generating plants being planned or built by an agency operating them. In some cases, an entity which is not an agency may still be subject to the OPMA when it is the functional equivalent of a public agency. This determination depends on whether it performs a governmental function, receives governmental funding, the extent of governmental involvement or regulation, and whether the entity was created by government. Some activities of public agencies are not subject to the OPMA. They include certain licensing and permitting activities, quasi-judicial matters, matters governed by the Washington State Administrative Procedures Act, and certain collective bargaining activities. All meetings of the governing body of a public agency shall be open, and the public and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting of the governing body of the public agency, except as otherwise provided in the OPMA, such as during a declared emergency. A governing body is defined as a multi-member board, commission, committee, council, or other policy or rulemaking body of a public agency, or any committee thereof, when the committee acts on behalf of the governing body, conducts hearings, takes testimony, or public comment. Agencies governed by an individual, such as a single director, are not subject to the OPMA. Meeting means meetings at which action is taken. Physical presence of the members is not required. A meeting can occur by phone or in some cases by email. I'll talk more about email exchanges later in this training. A meeting does not need to be titled meeting. The OPMA also applies to retreats, workshops, and study sessions. In order for there to be a meeting, there must be a quorum of the governing body. A meeting does not occur if there is no quorum. We've talked about the fact that the OPMA applies to a governing body at a meeting. In order to qualify as a meeting, the governing body must take action. Action means the transaction of the official business of a public agency by a governing body, including but not limited to receipt of public testimony, deliberations, discussion, considerations, reviews, evaluations, and final action. A subset of action is final action. Final action means a collective, positive, or negative decision, or any actual vote by a majority of the members of the governing body when sitting as a body or an entity upon a motion, proposal, resolution, order, or ordinance. Final action must occur in public. Secret ballots are not allowed. A majority of the members of a governing body may travel together or gather for purposes other than regular meetings or special meetings, so long as no action is taken. And remember, action includes discussion of agency business. This means a quorum of members can travel to a meeting together, or they can gather at a public or private event, such as a festival or social function, so long as they do not collectively discuss agency business or matters. In the next segment, we are going to talk about types of meetings where a governing body may meet. The first is regular meetings. Regular meetings are recurring meetings held in accordance with a periodic schedule by ordinance, resolution, bylaws, or other rules. State agencies file these notices of regular meetings each year with the Office of the Code Revider. Regular meeting agendas are to be posted online on the agency's website 24 hours in advance. A special purpose district or city or town is not required to post an agenda online If the agency has an aggregate valuation of property in the taxation district of less than 400 million, a population of less than 3,000, and provides confirmation to the state auditor when filing its annual report that the cost of posting notices to a website would exceed 0.1% of the agency's budgets. These provisions exempting very small agencies changed in 2022. Certain notice requirements are required for special meetings. These include written notice 24 hours in advance of the meeting, provided to members of the governing body at less wage. The notice must be provided to local newspapers, radio, and TV stations that have a request on file with the agency. The notice must also be posted on the agency's website if it has a website. There is an exception for very small agencies, agencies with no FTEs or with no one's job responsibilities, either by job description or by contract, with the responsibility to maintain or update the agency's website. The notice must be prominently displayed at the main entrance site and the meeting site unless the meeting is being held as a remote meeting or one where some or all members of the public are limited due to a declared emergency. The remote meeting provisions are new, and we'll be addressing those in just a moment. The notice must specify the time, place, and business to be transacted. Unlike regular meetings where the agenda may be changed and final action taken on a matter which was added to the agenda, under special meetings provisions, the governing body is prohibited from taking final action on any issue not on the original notice. There is an exception to the notice requirement for emergency special meetings. Those are meetings involving injury or damage to persons or property, or the likelihood of injury or damage, where time requirements make notice impractical and increase the likelihood of injury or damage. New in the OPMA through the 2022 amendments are provisions addressing the governing body holding remote meetings. After the declaration of emergency by a local or state government or agency or by the federal government, and the agency determines that it cannot hold a meeting of the governing body with members of the public in attendance with reasonable safety, the agency may either hold an all remote meeting without a physical location or hold a meeting with the governing body present, but some or all of the public excluded. In either of these instances, the agency must provide an option for the public to listen telephonically or by using a readily available alternate means in real time, such as available television, cable, broadcast, or the internet. Any option selected may not require any additional costs to access the program. If the agency does not provide an option, the agency is prohibited from taking action except for an executive session as authorized under the OPMA. If your agency is holding an all remote meeting with some or all of the public excluded, the notice of the meeting must include instructions on how the public may listen live to the meeting. An agency that held some of its regular meetings remotely prior to March 1st of 2020 may continue to do so with no declared emergency, so long as the agency provides an option for the public to listen as required for emergency remote meetings. Up to now, we've been talking about all the requirements to ensure openness and transparency. Under the OPMA, there are enumerated instances where the governing body may convene outside of the public's view in executive session, or if the governing body is discussing matters not subject to the OPMA. An executive session may occur as part of a regular or special meeting. The grounds for holding an executive session are limited to the purposes listed in the OPMA and are narrowly construed. The purpose of the executive session and the time it will end must be publicly announced before excluding the public, and the time can be extended by further announcement. Examples of purposes include certain real estate transaction discussions, reviewing negotiations on publicly bid contracts, evaluating the qualifications of an applicant for public employment, and meeting with legal counsel regarding enforcement actions, litigation, or potential litigation. The OPMA provides a list of authorized executive session purposes at RCW 4230-110. An agency must carefully follow the law when meeting in an executive session. For example, when meeting in an executive session under the OPMA to discuss agency litigation or potential litigation, there are 3 requirements. First, legal counsel representing the agency must be present. Second, the purpose is to discuss an agency enforcement action, litigation, or potential litigation to which the agency, governing body, or a member acting in official capacity is a party or is likely to become a party. And finally, public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. Remember, an agency can discuss only those matters in an executive session under the OPMA that it has told the public it would discuss. The members cannot talk about other topics in that executive session. In addition to an executive session, a public agency can have a closed meeting to discuss matters not subject to the OPMA, such as deliberating on a quasi-judicial matter or collective bargaining. Other laws may provide additional procedures or authority for particular meetings or hearings to be closed to the public. There may be additional laws for particular agencies as well. As we discussed, all meetings of the governing body or public agency shall be open and public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting of the governing body of a public agency, except as otherwise provided in the OPMA. An agency also cannot place conditions on attendance, such as requiring persons to register their names or fill out a questionnaire before attending. This provision does not prohibit any generally applicable condition determined by the governing body to be reasonably necessary to protect public health or safety, or to protect against interruption of the meeting, including a meeting at which the physical attendance by some or all members of the public is limited due to a declared emergency. As noted, email or phone call discussions amongst members of the governing body can be a meeting of the OPMA. But the purpose of the OPMA is to permit the public to attend and observe agency meetings. So when the public is unable to attend email or phone call discussions that are meetings at the OPMA, the act has been violated. Recent amendments to the OPMA make it clear members of the governing body can participate in meetings remotely with no declared emergency. However, public attendance must be maintained. In doing so, it is generally agreed that public notice procedures must be satisfied, and the agency has to set up a process for the public to attend, such as a speakerphone available at the agency's official meeting location, so the public can hear the discussion. In contrast, since an email exchange amongst a quorum of the members of a governing body is not open to the public, such an exchange in which an action is taken is a meeting that would violate the OPMA. And remember, action is broadly defined. It is very difficult to envision a way in which those email exchanges comply with public notice or attendance requirements for a regular or special meeting. One of the 2022 changes to the OPMA is a requirement that public agencies receive public comment at or before every regular meeting at which final action is taken. The 2022 amendments allow agencies to accept public comment either by written format or orally. If the governing body chooses written public comment, it can be submitted before or at the meeting. Any written comment received must be distributed to the governing body. The governing body may set reasonable deadline for submission prior to the meeting. The oral comment option is very similar to what many agencies were doing voluntarily before the 2022 amendments. Agencies can put reasonable procedures in place to allow for public comment. This may include limits to the time available for public comment or limit comment to those topics on the agenda. However, a governing body may also choose to accept public comment on any topic. If oral public comment is taken by the governing body, it shall, when feasible, provide an option for remote public comment for individuals that have difficulty attending. Difficulty attending may be due to a disability, limited mobility, or for any other reason that makes physical attendance difficult. The governing body is not required to accept public comment that renders orderly conduct of the meeting unfeasible. The OPMA has procedures with instructions for orderly conduct. The minutes of all regular and special meetings, except executive sessions of such boards, commissions, agencies, or authorities, shall be promptly recorded, and such records shall be open for public inspection. The OPMA does not require an audio or video recording of the meeting. Many agencies choose to do so. Public agencies are encouraged through the 2022 amendments to make audio or video recordings of meetings, or to provide an online streaming option of all regular meetings of the governing body, and to make any recordings that the agency does make available online for a minimum of 6 months. Violations of the OPMA can result in a lawsuit against an agency and its members. A court can impose a $500 civil penalty as personal liability against each member who knowingly violates the OPMA, and a $1,000 penalty for a subsequent knowing violation. The court can also declare any action taken at a meeting not held in compliance with the OPMA null and void. And the court will award costs and attorney's fees to a successful party seeking a remedy under the OPMA. To recap, this presentation covers the highlights of the OPMA. Public agencies may be subject to other laws governing other particular meetings, hearings, procedures. Some agencies have particular laws that govern their meetings as well. Like the OPMA, the laws concerning agency meetings and hearings can also be amended from time to time. Therefore, agencies are cautioned to be mindful of all current laws concerning their meeting and hearing procedures. Thank you for watching the Attorney General's OPMA training. For more information, there are available resources for agencies to receive training and technical assistance for compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. An official should first consult with its agency's counsel for routine assistance training. Additional resources are listed on this website. The Assistant Attorney General for Open Government is also available to provide information about the Open Public Meetings Act.
All right, so thank you for your attention, everyone. And for the record, I believe Miss Hart has joined us via Zoom. So welcome, Miss Hart.
Yep.
Our opportunities for council members to ask questions or clarify things. Does anybody have any questions or comments they'd like to make at this time? Mr. Deputy Mayor, sorry.
So like the rules committee, they're not open, they're just closed because there's no quorum?
Correct. That's why on our subcommittees, we're very careful not to have a quorum of council. There's at the most on the council subcommittees, 3 members of council, because we can't have a quorum in those. Otherwise, it's the OPMA that steps in. So.
Got it. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Beedler.
When we have a meeting, or not a meeting, an event that multiple people are going to, she always posts that we're going to go, but we're not going to discuss things. Is that required, or is that just a bonus that we do?
Is that required, Jackie? Do you know?
It's not required, but we do it as a precaution from the public. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We try to get ahead of everything. Sometimes we succeed. We'll get back to you here, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We're going to give others a chance to ask questions if they have it.
No, I'm good for now.
You're good for now? Okay. You're good? Okay, Ms. Fausto, you take this one to say.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question. Jacqueline, you said that it's not required. I was under the impression it is required to announce it to the public if there are going to be quorum, if there's going to be quorum anywhere. I mean, I think we need to give them a 24-hour notice in advance.
It is my understanding that it's not required. It's just a courtesy. And we'll always just post that as long as city business is not discussed.
Okay.
Because you can be invited to like ribbon cuttings and you don't have to notice it. It's just informing the public, but I can double check.
Okay, and I'll double check too, because I remember we went to the AWC training and Councilor Vasquez and Councilor Galvan were also there. Councilor Hart, who's online, was also there. And I remember they told us it was, but I could also be wrong. So I'll also double check and make sure that we're all on the same page about that. Just for my own knowledge as well.
At any rate, we're doing it just to be on the safe side. So
Yeah.
at this point, we're covered, but yeah, it will be handy to know for sure if we're required to do it. Ms. Hart, did you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Oh,
Deputy
wait.
Mayor, you were about to make a comment or ask a question?
It was the same as
Hers. Okay, perfect. So your question's been satisfactorily answered?
yeah.
I'm happy to hear that. Okay. So there was a couple of things that I noted. One is the texts and emails and other electronic communication between council members. When I first got on council, there were a couple of council members who started sending texts back and forth on their personal phones. And basically 2 of them would talk and then somebody else would talk to someone else via text and that sort of stuff. And the city manager at the time, Don Day, gave us a very clear education on what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. So we could have a text conversation between 2 of us, but as soon as it started going on down the line, we were having what was called a rolling meeting. And I think that was what it was called. But at any rate, it was a meeting and we had to be very cautious. And we were reminded that our texts then became public information and could be subpoenaed. I know I've had an email from the city clerk a couple of different occasions, any text, emails, or other communications for, talking about a specific subject that you might have had with any other council member. So they want that information. And one thing that's really important to remember is even if you delete your texts, they can be found. I mean, if there's a search. So yeah, keep it off your phone, meet in person, that sort of thing. If it's something that you need to meet between 2 of you or 3 of you. But remember, we need to be really careful about the whole quorum thing. We need to be careful about if we have a meeting with a couple of us and then we take that information to another council member, very cautious there. Now we want to make sure that we're maintaining ourselves within the law of the state. And I don't know if I'm saying anything wrong, Ms. Renteria, if you have any corrections or comments to fill in on that. Okay. All right. Further comments or questions? All right. Are we?
I do have up on the screen a question that was to MRC that kind of falls in the OPMA, and it would just say, for example, it says, we suggest that if a majority does attend a social event, they should just take care not to sit together and not discuss city business amongst themselves. It's okay, but it wouldn't be subject to OPMA, which wouldn't require us to notice it, but we do just to be safe.
Okay,
Okay. So
thank you for pulling that up.
Think that okay? That's fine.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll move on.
all right. If there's no further questions, then we're ready to move on to the next one.
Okay. So this is a video. It's called Great City Council Meetings, and it's with Ann McFarland, who's with Jurassic Parliament. And it does have the parliamentary procedures in this video. So I'm gonna hit play. This one is about 45 minutes, so.
And you should all have a copy of the slides and then documents to refer to as well. So
Good morning, everyone. We're here in the Parliament, to draft Parliament, where we show you how to master your meeting using Parliament tools. It's a great pleasure to be here today, and we're delighted to present Great City Council Meetings. These are our topics that we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk about getting started at your meeting, meeting discussion, point of order and appeal, how to do it, the authority and the role of the chair, the members and the staff, inappropriate remarks, the right kind of control, and then we'll have a review. So why are we here? What's the point of this morning's webinar? My goal is to inspire you to run effective meetings using 4 fundamental guidelines. Because a lot of times we tend to do things the way we always have, and it can take looking freshly at how we're doing things in order to do it better. After taking this training, you'll be able to list 4 fundamental guidelines, describe how the authority of the group has more weight than any one individual, even the chair. You'll be able to make a point of order when guidelines are broken, and you'll be able to label 5 inappropriate remarks. So I do want to say that I'm not an attorney, and this is based on the principles and practices of parliamentary procedure. So nothing in this presentation constitutes legal advice. If your attorney tells you something different, listen to your attorney. I want to start with the thought experiment. Let us imagine that the pandemic is over, we all have vaccines, and we're able to travel freely. And we can inspire ourselves with journeys to New York, to Paris, to Bangkok, to Sydney, whatever. So you make a plan for a journey, and you go to your local airport and you board the plane. And once you get in the plane, you find that the passengers are you and 374 chimpanzees. What are the chances that you're going to arrive safely and in one piece at your destination? The chances are 0, because chimpanzees, when placed in close proximity, resolve their differences by fighting. They are notorious for being very hostile towards each other and engaging in all sorts of tricks and enterprises as part of their social game. We share a lot of DNA with chimpanzees, but they're very different. So we, human beings, we are better than chimps. We are better than chimps. Most human beings are peaceful and compliant, at least the kind of human beings who tend to serve in local government or local government staff. When group expectations are clear, they will follow them. So many of our councils and local governments do just fine, and their meetings are orderly and quiet, like this one here from the Port of Kennewick. Everybody's in its place and everybody does the things that they ought to do. But there can be potholes. Sometimes meetings deteriorate and become more like a hockey game with everybody striving to make their goal. And so that is the situation where we need to think about having common guidelines. We believe that adopting and enforcing common guidelines is your very first step in order to run great city council meetings. Now, we don't like the idea that guidelines must be enforced, but all human organizations, even benign institutions like hospitals, schools, and retirement communities ultimately depend on power enforcement for their success. We do not live in a garden. So we have available to you, and I will send it to you after the webinar, sample discussion guidelines for local governments. These, you're free to adopt these any way you like, to change them, to pick the parts that work for you and to give the rest a pass. But it's our best effort at distilling the things that we have seen that need to be included in discussion guidelines. So let's talk about getting started at your meeting. First thing you do, obviously, local government anyway, is get yourself a gavel, which you have to be careful with the spring. So you call the meeting to order, and in the chair reserved for the person running the meeting. The word chair has two meanings. One is the physical chair in which you sit, and one is the authority you exercise as the chair. You rap the gavel lightly one time, and you announce this meeting of the Dianopolis City Council is called to order. You ask the clerk to take the roll, and you announce that a quorum is present or not. So it's the chair's duty to a quorum is the minimum number of voting members who must be present for business to be done. And usually it's a majority, more than half, of the members in office, the members who are actually serving on your council. Quorum is different from votes counted. And if you lose your quorum, you can't do business. And of course, for a city council, business includes discussion. So the agenda is prepared by the leadership, but it's within the control of the council, subject to notice requirements, of course. And it can be adopted at the beginning of the meeting by unanimous consent or a majority vote. Once it's adopted, it takes a 2/3 vote to change it later in the meeting. And you don't need to include approval of the agenda or other minor procedural motions in the minutes. Many bodies do, but it's not required. Now, one way to adopt the agenda is to use unanimous consent. It's a form of voting. It's a kind of fast track, and it's very efficient for minor procedural matters. The presider suggests something, and if you agree, you remain silent. Silence means consent. And if you disagree, you speak up. You say objection, or I have a change, or whatever. And then the presider knows that everyone does not agree and abandons that fast track to use the regular method. So you don't have to explain why. You just say, no, I object. And then the presider knows that we don't have unanimous consent. Now, in these days, some cities are using this for taking votes on major issues. And I think that's okay as long as it's crystal clear. I'm more in favor of roll call myself for a Zoom meeting, but that's your choice and it can work well. Now, here's a language tip for you. If you as chair say without objection, or if there is no objection, you are allowing the group to have the final authority, but also using your leadership position to move things ahead. For example, under Robert's rules, the chair may not call a recess unilaterally. But if you sense that a recess would be a good idea, you can say, if there's no objection, we'll take a 10-minute recess. People are unlikely to object, in my experience. So Jurassic Parliament recommends that the agenda should have proposed times for each item to keep everyone on track. This is not Robert, this is us. But we also recommend that you add all times approximate or estimated to keep flexibility. You don't want to lock yourself in where you have to take a formal vote to give yourself 5 more minutes to discuss them. And we recommend that your agenda items identify information, discussion, and decision. We recommend against using the word action because of that quirk that action can include discussion on a local government. So here's a sample city council agenda, which I will also send to you, where they have estimated time on each item. And here's a different format where they have the actual time given and then the estimated time after that. So you can do this or not if you like, but I have known cities where it really helps to keep everybody focused and on track. And we recommend that you should establish time limits. We recommend in these Zoom days, 3 hours maximum for meetings, 5 minutes each for individual member discussion and council reports, 30 minutes maximum for public comment, and 3 minutes next year for public speakers. So here's a paper, Time Limits Create Productive Meetings, that tells you about it, and we'll be sending this to you all. Now I'm going to talk about meeting discussion, point of order, and appeal. So there is a key principle in Robert's rules, the principle of equality. All members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations. Obvious, right? It's pretty straightforward. But it doesn't always get applied as well as it should be in our meetings. And one principle that follows from this is that discussion in council and committee meetings is not a conversation. It's not a conversation. It's debate and it has its own rules. So here's a fundamental guideline. No one may speak a second time until everyone who has spoken once. This is so important. We're going to have it in red. No one may speak a second time until everyone who wishes to do so has spoken once. So have you heard of this? Do you follow this rule? Because our experience is that groups tend not to follow. Councils and committees tend to discuss their affairs in conversational mode. And in conversations, dominant people tend to dominate and agreeable people tend to let them. So you must have a structure to make sure that everyone has an equal chance to speak. And this is both fair and efficient. So that old hockey game, if that happens, you can have a point of order. A member can make a point of order. We represent this in our system by a flying dinosaur. I know that some of you are familiar with our dinosaur representation of motions, and point of order is a dinosaur. So the chair rules on the point. It's a motion claiming that a procedural mistake has been made. And according to Robert, it can only be made by a member of the body. But we recommend authorizing key staff to do so also. They often know the rules pretty darn well. Now, the public may not raise a point of order. If you have someone standing up in the audience and saying, point of order, they are out of order. Two very important points to remember. You may interrupt a speaker if necessary to make a point of order, although we don't recommend doing it lightly. It should only be done when it's a really serious situation. And a point of order must be timely. It has to be made at the time of the offense. You cannot bring it up later in the meeting or the next day. If you don't bring it up at the time, you're out. And so that's why it's great that you're all taking this training so that you'll know when you're able to do that. So let's look at an example of a point of order here.
Point of order.
Make your point.
That comment breaks our rules of decorum.
The point is well taken. Members may not be concerned. Point of order indicates that a rule is being broken. So this is how you process it. The member says point of order, the chair says point, the member explains, and then the chair issues the ruling. So notice that we're using the third person here to keep things neutral and lessen conflict. The chair states the general rule. You're like the voice of Robert. You're speaking on behalf of the rules of procedure. So don't say you're out of order or you made a mistake. If you say you made a mistake, then you're personally it, and that's not going to go well. Now, when in doubt, you can ask the group. The chair can always ask the group to decide if a point of order is correct. The jargon is well taken or not. So the chair doesn't have to say point of order. The chair already has the duty of maintaining order and decorum. So the chair just needs to take appropriate action. Now, what about if we get a situation like this? Because they're just going around in circles and wasting time with this discussion.
Point of order. The chair must follow the same rules as the rest of us.
So the point is well taken. The chair apologizes for getting carried away. So the chair is subject to the same rules. A member may raise a point of order, and when the chair breaks the rules, which seems weird because the chair then issues a ruling on it, but that's the way the system works. Now, there is a pitfall here, which I want to bring to your attention. I gave this training to one city, and they immediately weaponized point of order. They spend their whole meetings throwing points of order at each other like little darts. You may interrupt to make a point of order. Sometimes you have to, but usually it's not necessary to interrupt, and you should just hold back. And I believe also usually it's best not to call a point of order for germaneness. In that city, a member said something like this: I believe we shouldn't approve this transportation plan because it's more important for us to take care of our needs with the homeless. Another member will interrupt and say, point of order, the homeless is not germane to this discussion. Well, that's just ridiculous. You know, let people develop their theme and let people say what they want to say. Now, if they start telling you about their honeymoon in Peru, okay, that's not relevant. But in general, we ask you to be careful here. So notice that point of order does not count as a turn in discussion. It's not counted against your chance to debate. Once the chair has ruled on a point of order, the only allowable form of discussion is to appeal the ruling. So let's look at appeal. In our view, appeal is the most important motion in all of Robert's rules and the least known. It's the least known. The chair enforces order and discipline. Any two members can appeal the ruling of the chair. One member appeals and one second appeals. The exception is if the ruling is a matter of fact on which there cannot be two interpretations, the ruling cannot be appealed. So this is the answer to your question, Carolyn. So let's look at this.
The port was a cesspool of corruption.
Point of order.
State your point.
That comment breaks our rules of decorum.
The point is well taken. Members may not use this term.
Appeal.
Second. Very well, the ruling of the chair has been appealed and seconded. The members will decide the matter. The question is whether the chair's ruling that the words cesspool of corruption break our rules of decorum should be sustained. All those who believe it should be sustained, please say aye. All those who believe it should not be sustained, please say no. In this instance, the members voted no, so the ruling of the chair was not sustained. I've put this unhappy figure in just for fun, but in fact, if you lose an appeal, it's better to maintain a neutral face. Try to give the impression that you don't care.
Sorry.
I love to use that example because somebody actually said that the Port of Seattle was a cesspool of corruption. It's great when you can have real life examples. So the chair must take care in explaining the vote to the members. The basic principle is the chair's ruling stands until it's overturned. And the question that you're asking them to vote on is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? So this is kind of confusing. If you stand with the person making the appeal, you're going to want to vote against this vote. But if you stand with the chair, you want to vote in favor. So notice that appeals pertaining to language and decorum cannot be debated. Point of order is made by one member, but an appeal needs a second. And point of order and appeal are processed immediately. No other business can take place until they are resolved. So we believe in Jurassic Parliament that point of order and appeal are the heart of democracy. They are absolutely the essence of how the group is the final authority. So getting to the tool with them is a great thing for you and for your members. And I see there's a question about a member who doesn't understand the topic or are so far afield they aren't making sense. My inclination would be to let them speak out their turn, their 5 minutes or whatever, and then just move on. I think that interrupting them will just create an emotional barrier, and it's better perhaps after they've finished, you could try to clarify. But nobody likes being told that they're not making sense. So this can be a problem. are we going to do this? We recommend these points, which we'll develop a little bit in this unit. Seek recognition before speaking. No one may speak a second time till everyone who wishes to do so has spoken once. No sidebar conversations or whispering. Absolutely no interrupting. And two optional rules: speak to the chair, and debate must be either for or against. So members must seek recognition from the presider before speaking. Again, I'm going to give you that in red because it's so important. Don't let people just blurt stuff out. You raise your hand and you wait to speak until the chair calls your name, nods at you, or gives you some other sign that you have permission to speak, that you have the floor. And obviously online, you can use the raise hand function or raise your physical hand. When you have not been recognized, you have a duty to remain silent. The exception is a point of order when essential. I watched one city council meeting a couple of weeks ago, and it was so disturbing that I couldn't sleep that night. The member was arguing with the chair, and he kept on arguing back, which he's not allowed to do. So we have this paper, Rights and Responsibilities of the Members, which we will send to you. It's by a colleague, Weldon Barrett, and it's really handy to look it over and see what your rights and responsibilities are. So I'll have a couple of questions here, which I'll take at the end of this week. So you can keep track of who has spoken and who wishes to speak using a chart. You can empower your vice chair, your mayor pro tem, to do this. Great training for them, and you can use the round robin. So this is a great method. The chair goes around the table asking each person in turn for their opinion. People may pass and speak at the end. It's important to have a pencil in your hand to jot down points or questions for when your turn arrives. And the chair must wait their turn also. This rule applies to questions and answers and discussions with staff. Don't let any two people hijack the meeting. So here's the speaking chart. So you just put the names down the side and then you check everybody off. And again, you have full permission to modify this as appropriate for your group. So no interrupting. When a member has they have the right to speak until they've completed their comments. Robert even says that the chair may not interrupt a member just because the chair knows more than the member about the subject. So speaking to the chair is optional, but in groups that use it, members address their remarks to the chair. So if I'm not clear about something John has said, I say, Mr. Mayor, could you ask Councilmember Brown to explain his views more fully, or to tell us what the budget number is? Everything pings back and forth between the chair and the members, and this depersonalizes issues and improves the clarity of discussion. Because when people talk directly to each other, discussion often goes down the rabbit hole. So we also recognize in Jurassic Parliament that sometimes there's benefit in the conversational style or informal discussion. It provides a sparky flow of ideas that can be beneficial. It can be useful in committee meetings or work sessions. But I beg of you, please, don't make the conversational style your ordinary or default style of discussion. Notice also that you can't speak against your own motion, but you can vote against it. And if you've changed your mind, ask permission to withdraw the motion. You can't explain your vote during voting, and you can't justify your vote once the vote has been taken. If you have a position, explain it during the discussion. There are no interruptions during voting. Even a point of order is waived. The procedure for call for the vote. So in a small board, up to about 12, there's no limit on the number of times that members may speak. But when the chair senses that discussion has come to an end, the chair asks, is there further any discussion, or are you ready to vote? It's kind of a rhetorical question. And then the chair takes the vote by restating the motion, very important. Then say all those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say no. We must call for the negative. And then the chair announces the result. The ayes have it, the motion passes, and we will institute this program, or the noes have it, the motion fails, and we will not institute this program. But we have more about this in our book and on the website. We have a question, if the chair is involved in a sidebar conversation, is there anything I can do about it? I would say probably not, because clerks generally don't have the right to speak up during a meeting. Perhaps the clerk could pass a note to the chair if you're in physical mode, but, or if the clerk has been empowered to raise a point of order, you could do that, but the chair wouldn't like that. The chair would not like someone who is a subordinate raising a point of order publicly in the meeting. We do have a blog entry, and it's also available as a PDF called when should the clerk speak up? I'm going to say it again. We have a blog entry called when should the clerk speak up? And that goes into a lot more detail about these kinds of issues. Then someone asked about a round robin. So in a round robin, you go around the table and you ask each person in turn to speak. It's a substitution for recognition, for recognizing people as they raise their hand. And it has the advantage that everybody gets an opportunity to speak and to hear where they are before we start talking about motions. Okay, question come up. Are you saying it's required to withdraw your motion even if you change your mind? No, it's not required. That's a option you have. As the maker of the motion, you have the right to request that it be withdrawn. Then the question came, what if the chair only calls on certain members? Are you allowed to note that to the chair? Sure. If other people are not getting a chance to speak, you would make a point of order. And then as to the question about what happens when the rules are violated by the chair, we recommend first education, and second, if that doesn't work, then making a point of order. So I just want to make this suggestion for council members. This is just me. This is direct. It's not wrong. Don't try to convince your colleagues that you are right. Don't answer them back or question what they said. Don't argue with them. Just state your own position as clearly and effectively as you can. That's the way to be a leader and to bring about change. Now, let's look at the authority and role of the chair, the members, and the staff. As I mentioned, Robert has different rules for small boards, up to about 12 people. In a small board, the chair may make discuss and vote unless the law, regulations, or bylaws say otherwise. For instance, in Washington state, there are restrictions on when the elected mayor, a strong mayor, may vote. So you want to know your state law. We recommend that the chair exercise restraint by speaking and voting last and by refraining from making motions. This is our suggestion. It's Jurassic Park, but it's what we think really helps. In Washington state, we have an interesting situation because elected mayors, so-called strong mayors, are not actually part of the council, but by tradition, they do have the right to take part in the debate as long as they don't dominate the question. So, an important question here comes in about our public members subject to Robert's rules and point of order. So we will indeed cover that in just a little while. And if the chair interrupts and argues, then I think a member has the right to make a point of order and say, Robert's rule says the chair may not interrupt. So this is the paper on small board rules are different. It explains about how these rules apply to a board of up to about 12. Now this paper was prepared using the 11th edition of Robert's Rules. And now, as you know, the 12th edition has been published. So the good news is that the two editions are substantially the same. There have been no major changes. There are minor changes. And if you have adopted Robert's Rules of Order, you are now bound by the 12th edition. So you should get a copy. We recommend this spiral version, which is only available from the National Association of Parliamentarians. And I'm going to be publishing a blog entry on that fairly soon. So I'd like here to discuss two different types of organizations. One type is called an accountability hierarchy. It's shaped like a triangle or a pyramid, and at the top you've got the boss. The boss is in charge, and the boss hires people for the organization, tells them how to do their job, and if they do it badly, fires them. So this is a very common structure in our society, And one feature of it is that it has rank or status. People who are close to the boss are higher in rank than people who are down below. Now, I myself think that's okay. I think it's necessary in order to have accountability, to know where the buck stops. If all of us on this call had the job of building an addition to City Hall and we all had the same status, we would never finish the job. We need the hierarchy and we need that accountability. Okay, so I do see a question here about the specifics of your municipality, and I can't answer that. I would have to look specifically at your guidelines and law in order to be able to address it. Now, there is a whole different type of organization, which is called a voluntary association. The other type, the accountability hierarchy, is very, very common. And we know about it because businesses are structured like this, hospitals, schools, armies. It's very, very common. But we forget sometimes that there is a voluntary association in which a group of people come together to achieve a common purpose. They set up some guidelines for themselves and they select a leader. But the leader is a peer. The leader is an equal on the same status as everybody else with some special duties. So your city councils, your planning commissions, your county councils, your nonprofit boards, they are all voluntary associations. And in our view, one of the biggest problems we have in this country is that our vision of the leader as the captain of industry is so strong that as soon as people get elected mayor, chair, president, they start acting like the boss, and their members start treating them like the boss, which is just not right. So here are some key points. Each member has an equal right to speak and to try to persuade others to accept their view. During meetings, the chair controls the process, so the group can make the decisions. And during meetings, the chair is the servant of the group and the group is the final authority. So this, again, is so important that I'm going to give it to you in red, just like my shirt. During meetings, the chair is the servant of the group and the group is the final authority. Now, it's different outside of meetings. If you're the elected leader or the appointed leader, if you're president, mayor, or boss, you have things you have to do outside the meeting. But during the meeting is what we're talking about here. So here's a paper about it. The chair is not in charge of your meeting. I wrote that with a paradoxical title to try to get your attention. So you have both types of structure. Your council forms a voluntary association, but your mayor or president or, your council forms a voluntary association. The mayor or the city manager and staff form an accountability hierarchy. So it's two different types of organization in one institution. Now, what is each person's individual? When you walk out from that council meeting and you're standing on the sidewalk, how much authority do you have? Anybody want to tell me in the chat? You know what you think, how much authority do you have? Yes, zero. Karina's got it. Each person's authority as an individual is none whatsoever. Zero, zilch. So, we're so individualistic that seems kind of un-American. But in fact, it's deeply and profoundly American. And here it is. All members of a governing board share in a joint and collective authority, which exists and can be exercised only when the group is in session. All members of a governing board share in a joint and collective authority, which exists and can be exercised only when the group is in session. So this to me is a critical statement about how a whole democratic system works. Your authority is joint and collective. So democracy is fragile and it depends on mutual acceptance and understanding. It can only work if everyone agrees to follow its principles and process. Everyone must know and understand the rules because you are it. You are your own authority. Now, in Washington State, we have this. The council shall determine its own rules and order of business and may establish rules for the conduct of council meetings and the maintenance of order. It might be different in your state. You might have some other provision in the law, but it's just generally accepted that the council establishes those rules. So remember that there's this sequence of authority. The US Constitution comes first with our right of association. Then comes state law. Then comes your charter, articles of incorporation or code, whatever it is that gives you the right to exist. Then your bylaws or your board rules. Then any special rules of order that you might choose. And then at the bottom, Robert's Rules of Order. People are surprised sometimes to hear that. They don't understand about that, but that's the way that it works. Robert's Rules of Order comes at the very bottom. So this means that the board may sanction. The power of the group extends to the power to sanction. It's best if your board rules of procedure include specific steps to be taken when the guidelines are broken. But if Robert's Rules is your authority, you already have this power. You have this power. And note that the council can pass a motion of censure without using the full disciplinary process. Chapter 20 of Robert's Rules has a lengthy disciplinary process. You don't need to do that. You can pass a motion of censure on your own. And we have this paper sanctioning road board members that explains about how to do that. But if you are plagued with such a member and you want examples of censure motions, send me an email. But what is your individual power? When people get elected to public office or appointed to a citizen committee, often they're surprised at how little power they have. An individual member may not have a staff member fired, direct staff, oversee employee work product, or interfere in administration. Know the limits of your role. You are a policymaker, not a mover and a shaker. So council members may not do the work of the city. Elected officials care deeply about their city. Sometimes they have special knowledge and expertise. They may make suggestions to the mayor or city manager, but they may not do the work of the city themselves because they must not cross the line between legislation and administration. This is a legal requirement. So I want to mention that it's okay to disagree. The fact that people have different opinions is a strength. It's a good thing. But we tend to identify with our own position. When we're defeated, we sometimes take it personally, and this is a mistake. Because at the end of the day, the body must unite behind its decision. It's a basic democratic principle that the decision of the majority voting at a properly called meeting is the decision of the body as a whole. The minority must make it their decision as well. It's a terrible system. But you want to see the Winston Churchill quote here. I love this thing that he said. Democracy is the worst system of government in all the world, with the exception of those others that have been tried from time to time. Isn't that a good and true thing? So the bottom line is that in the democracy, how we decide is more important than what we decide. Courtesy and respect, no surprises, no unilateral action, no inroads. These are essential for the system to work. And when serving on a public body, members have a duty to uphold the decision of that body, even if they disagree with it. Members may express their disagreement in public, but they may not attempt to undermine the decision. Of course, they're free to try to persuade their colleagues during the meeting to change the decision within certain limits. But undermining is absolutely not allowed because it's sabotaging the council. And we're just going to publish a blog entry on this, possibly tomorrow, about this point, because I've had several instances that have come up recently. So if you haven't subscribed to our blog, I recommend that you do. And I want to give you this wonderful quote from Cornell Clayton. The willingness to engage in honest debate and lose on issues you care deeply about reaffirms your commitment to common citizenship. I think that's a great statement. And even more, what is the alternative? The ballot box is sacred because the alternative is blood. Elias Canetti really nailed it here. And we see this, all across the world. We see bodies where power is the sole determinant. And with all our faults, it's a wonderful thing in our nation that local governments, who all are assisting as elected officials or staff. You are assisting your community because you believe in what you're doing, not because you have paid a lot of money in bribes or because you have a private army, but because you care. And I really honor you for your work because I feel that local governments do not receive the recognition they should have for all the work, the hard work and dedication that they put in. It's a pleasure to work with you. So before we go on to inappropriate remarks, Nicole is mentioning she's going to assemble a list of relevant blog posts for this webinar. We had a question or comment about the difference between the mayor on a council and a strong elected mayor. And that can be a problem, but I do want to, which I'm not addressing here, but the strong mayor is in charge of the administration, and the so-called weak mayor or the mayor who's a member of a council is not in charge of the administration. That's a key difference there. If you would like those censure motions, please send me an email. Don't just rely on the chat. Send me an email. All right, so let's talk about inappropriate remarks. It's a basic principle of parliamentary procedure that debate must be germane or relevant to the topic at hand. Certain kinds of remarks are inappropriate because they're not relevant. So we have the next fundamental guideline that courtesy and respect are required. And there are 5 kinds of inappropriate remarks. Personal remarks about other members, except for conflict of interest. Discourteous remarks, insulting language and attacks. Inflammatory language. Criticizing past actions of the group with 2 exceptions. If the subject is under discussion, if the whole body is discussing something, then you may criticize. Or if a member is about to propose a motion to defend or change the action at the end of their speech, then you may criticize. But then the big umbrella is remarks that are not germane or relevant to the discussion. So during the council meeting, members have a duty to be polite to their colleagues, their staff, and everyone else. This is part of their fiduciary duty of obedience to the goals of the organization. So we have this paper I'm going to send you, inappropriate remarks on local government councils. So let's have an example of an inappropriate remark.
You're only saying that because you're a banker.
So what kind of inappropriate remark is that? Can you tell me in the chat what kind it is? No, absolutely, it's personal. And Robert says the measure, not the member, is the subject of debate. The measure, not the member. Measure being the thing that we're talking about. One of our commentators said, bankers are people too. Absolutely. So I don't think it's defaming. I think it's just a statement of fact, although it's kind of insultingly said. But the point is that it's not allowed. So the focus of our meeting is words on paper. Words on paper. Focus on the motions and not on the people who make the motions. And we recommend that council members take this approach outside the meeting too. Focus on actions taken. And do not criticize colleagues outside the meeting. I worked with one city some years ago where the members were regularly going on television and describing their fellow council members as racist. That is a big mistake. Whatever you may think, it's not good for your city if you do that. So here's another example.
I think we're being kind of hasty here. If you studied the zodiac, you know that the sun is in the house of Taurus this day. Here's what my horoscope says. You need to reach a decision or there's no way for you to rush it.
So what do you think about that? Tell me in the chat if you would. Yeah. What kind of remark is it? It's a remark that's not germane. City council discussion must be relevant to the topic at hand. You want to be vigilant but reasonable about it. The chair can call a member to order if remarks are not germane, and a member can call another member to order. In general, I recommend not interrupting to do that. So the fundamental guideline here is one thing at a time. Robert is very strict that discussion must be relevant to the topic at hand. So here's a good language tip for you. Members will kindly keep their remarks strictly to the topic under the discussion. Who decides if any question arises whether a remark is appropriate or not, or a comment is germane, the chair rules subject to appeal. The chair may also turn immediately to the group to ask the members to decide. Ultimately, it's the group's call. So we have this new paper, How to Be Objective About Subjective Comments, and it includes a little script for turning to the group. Now, there is the old deer in the headlights problem. You know, you hear something and you know that it's off, but how do you identify it? So we have a tool which I can recommend to you. It's this is the time for shameless self-promotion. It's a cheat sheet, a weight cheat sheet, laminated. And it gives 30 examples of what you can say in different situations if something is said that breaks the rules. A friend of mine called it my placement, so that's available for purchase on our website. Now, important to note, we're speaking here about discussion within council and committee meetings. These prohibitions on what you can say do not apply to the public when they're giving public comment. Attendees do not have the right to disrupt the meeting, but in general, the courts have found that mere words do not constitute disruption. If a free speech issue comes to court, often the local government loses the case. Be prepared with an action plan in case of difficulties. Consult with your attorney and your staff. So here are our guidelines for public comment in local government. This is available for free, and it gives our best distillation. Notice that it's Jurassic Parliament. It's me and my colleagues, not Robert. Robert doesn't say anything at all about public comment except referring to the rights of guests and meetings. Now let's talk about the right kind of control. In order to make all this work, you have to have three things. You have to acknowledge that you're getting by attending how this system works. You have to have a majority on your council in favor of civility and this system. It requires a majority. And you've got to have the personal moxie, the chutzpah, the energy and the drive to put it all into practice. It's not easy. It's easier to drift or to coast. The chair cannot control who speaks with. The chair serves as a benevolent dictator, enforcing the rules that the group has chosen. It's the group's choice. It's not just a personal thing. And individual members must seek recognition before speaking. If someone speaks up without being recognized, you stop. If someone speaks out of turn, you interrupt them. If someone makes insulting remarks, you cut them off. So members have a duty to obey the chair's direction. If they disagree, they cannot argue back. So what can they do? They can make a point of order or they can appeal. And if you feel bad about obeying the chair, you might think to yourself that what you're really doing is you're obeying the people. You're obeying our democratic system. A fundamental choice that this country made, you know, a long time ago, that we're not going to have single individuals riding roughshod, that we're going to do things as a group, and we're going to defer to the entire group. So how should you control? We recommend the crouching tiger method. You see that this Sumatran beauty is laid out at ease, perfectly calm on her rock, but the minute something happens, she's going to pounce. Don't wait halfway through the meeting to try to establish rules of order. So Robert has this great phrase, the chair should never get excited, which I truly love. I think it's wonderful. So we want to avoid this kind of situation.
Oh, wow.
Which you know are familiar with here in Washington State. It's real life, it's not posed. Not a good situation when that occurs. So here's a free cheat sheet. It's for meeting management, and it goes into all of these details. So I want to invite you to keep in touch. We have a free monthly newsletter, we have a free weekly blog, and you can email me anytime. I'm always delighted to have parliamentary questions. We have our book, Mastering Council Meetings, which I know many of you have already. And you can also develop your meeting muscles by taking an online course. Take control of your meetings using our rules. Our course goes into detail and gives you the opportunity to short videos, each 5 or 6 minutes in length, so it's only a couple of hours. I said we were here to inspire you to run effective meetings using 4 fundamental guidelines. And after this, I said that after taking this training, you'll be able to list 4 fundamental guidelines, describe how the authority of the group has more weight than any one individual, make a point of order when guidelines are broken, and label 5 inappropriate remarks. So these are the guidelines. And to me, these are the essence of Robert's rule. If you follow these, you're gonna be good. The chair is the servant of the group and the group is the final authority. All members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations to ensure that no one may speak a second time. So everyone who wishes to do so has spoken once. Courtesy and respect are required at all times, and one thing at a time. So here are your essential guidelines for the city council. And this is a second product, which I'll also send you if I'm watching the state, you might find it helpful. This was prepared by a group of parliamentarians. It's a citizen's guide, and it's just 10 pages long, but it summarizes how things will work in our state. Now, why do we need these rules? Richard Rohr says, win-lose is the only game most of us understand. We have a constant unspoken need for domination and actually find no enjoyment in win-win situations. Now, I'm sure that's not true of you. I'm sure that you all are at a higher spiritual level. But as for me, if I'm in a fight, I want to win. And so I think the important thing to remember is that council meetings are not a fight. And when you start to feel your gorge rising and your position hardening, you want to step back and you want to step back and you want to remember a couple of other things. The British author Samuel Johnson said, kindness is within our power, liking is not. If you don't like your fellow council members, you can't make yourself like them, but you can be kind to them. And you must be kind. You must be kind to your fellow colleagues because serving on a local government board is like being in a marriage arranged by the citizens. I love this quote from Tommy Tanui. You all have no choice about whom you're serving with, so kindness is the order of the day. Finally, I want to say that rules are proxy. What do I mean by that? If we had an ideal platonic universe, people would be allowed to vote when they had demonstrated that they were mature thinkers who were well educated in the public issues of the day. We don't have any way of measuring it. So instead, we say people can vote when they're 18. The rule, vote when you're 18, is a proxy for the value of maturity. So this is not original, this is from Joe Simon, but rules are necessary, but they're limited. They're always based on the past. They're always approximate. You always want to look to the value that underlies the rule. Look to the value that underlies the rule. And the key value in Robert, in my view, is respect. Respect is the value. You must treat your colleagues with respect. And if you don't respect them, as people sometimes say to me, then act as if you did. So I hope that you found it helpful. I would love to hear words from you that I can quote. Probably feel the hard sell. It's great to be able to share the visual experience that you take to the method. I think that our time is about done. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for attending and participating as you have. And it's been a pleasure. So I hope you keep in touch and I welcome your comments and your feedback. And I hope that you feel more knowledgeable and more empowered to have great meetings. And also that you all have a wonderful day.
All right, so obviously this was a Zoom meeting recorded back in 2020 or 2021. Information is still relevant. I know we've been talking in council a couple of different times. This Jurassic Parliament section has come up and whether we should watch the video, and I never have. I think recommended that we watch it and it just didn't come up for the council meeting. The reference materials that she was talking about, it's all, I think, in this packet. As I thumbed through it, I saw most of it. So you can refer to that. I don't know about the rest of you, but I was relieved on some of the stuff that I've seemed to be doing fairly well, and a little disappointed in myself in some of the stuff that I haven't been doing also all that well. So I will definitely make the attempt to improve on my part. And if you catch me out, don't be shy about bringing it up to me. So I don't know, is there comments? Yeah.
I would just like to encourage council, if there is any of the materials that weren't provided, or you would like a copy of something that is in there, please get a hold of City Clerk Renteria, and we will get those ordered for you so that you have access to that. So as you come across there, if there's something that is maybe a book or something that deals with any of the Jurassic Parliament, just let us know and we will provide that to you.
Okay, so questions, comments, Mr. Beeler?
Two things. I did a point of order. And I know it said that the audience can't do one, but mine was on somebody in the audience. I think I did right when somebody sounded like he threatened us.
I don't know if it was necessarily a point of order, but you can certainly object, because that particular audience member, that's an illegal activity, and
I point in order to use.
Right.
To make you aware of it.
right. And yeah, I think several other council members were either right at the point of doing it or doing the same thing. I think in that situation, I don't think there's anything against what you've done. Seemed to me that it was fairly legal, and the council member who was on the receiving end of that certainly protested immediately as well. So
Then the second thing is there any chance that the city can get all staff and council the new Rules of Robert books?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
yeah, I think that would be something good for all of us to have. We can refer to that. I'm certain that there's certain members of council who'll be able to have that memorized within just a couple of days. I am not one of them. So
I've got a book, but I don't know how old it is.
yeah, last time I saw Robert's Rules of Order, I was in high school, and that was a couple of decades ago. All right, other comments or questions?
I have questions.
Yes.
So I'm going based off the number of the boxes in the bottom. So number 20 says that it's recommended for each meeting to be 3 hours maximum. So my question is, can it surpass those 3 hours, like over like maybe a few minutes?
So when we start talking about our council rules of order, it does say that our meetings are limited to 3 hours as well. However, by a motion of council, it can be extended. So I don't know if you noticed that in the order of importance, Robert's Rules of Orders are under the council rules of procedure. But yeah, we can definitely, once we get to the 3 hour limit, we can, by a vote, continue the meeting. At one time, as I understand it, city council meetings went for many hours. They were very long, and council at one time decided our meetings are limited to 3 hours maximum unless we vote to continue to meet, or the meeting can be continued to another time. So, but yeah, if it's something that's going to make the meeting like 5 minutes longer, yeah, we'll probably all vote and say, let's finish this topic.
I have a few questions, but I'll let everyone else.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Hart, have you got any questions?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Yes, sir.
What does our procedure say about the city clerk doing a point of order? Is she allowed to?
I don't think we've ever really discussed that.
Yeah, I've done it once and Deputy Mayor Restucci was not very happy, but so whatever you guys decide.
I normally don't do it.
So I consider myself a bit of an amateur on that sort of thing. So me personally, if the clerk were to speak up or the manager were to speak up and say, that's not how you do that, I would appreciate that, to be honest with you. It may be something that individual mayors may have a different idea about. Ms. Hart, do you have any comment on that from when you were mayor? Would that have bothered you?
Actually, I think in a lot of times it helps us get back on track or stay on focus. And I believe at different times when the clerk or the city manager has kind of stepped in, has actually been to the benefit of the council. So I'm okay with that.
I tend to agree with that as well. So, yeah, I think that might be individual mayors may just have a different feel about that. So, okay. And Ms. Vasquez, you have a number of questions, you said, so.
Yeah, so number 45, the box number 45, you just implemented and practiced this one just before this second training with our Deputy Mayor Galvan. He wanted another question and then he gave us all a turn. So an example, right? I pass and let's say we go to Councilor Ripley and then Councilor Frausto, and let's say all of a sudden I do have a question, can I come back and ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I just
No,
want to be clear.
no, that's been our practice in the past. I know, as mayor, Mr. Restucci was very good about that. He had a very thorough knowledge of, Robert's rules. And, he was very good about that. And when I was first on council, I very much appreciated his control of council, and I've tried to do, I don't have the depth of his knowledge, but certainly have tried to where you're gonna have other things come up from what people say. Somebody's gonna say something and you'll think of something different. And it's perfectly fine when everybody's had their chance to speak that you come back with another question. Even if you didn't tell me you had it at first, say, got another one. All right, absolutely, go for it. That's why we're here.
And I do think raising your hand, just like Deputy Mayor did just a few moments ago, that really shows that, oh, okay, I remembered something I needed to say, and that helps the chair recognize that you have something to say.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that is one of the reasons that I choose to sit way over here so that I can look at the whole council at once. If somebody puts a hand up, I can see that. So it's
Okay.
not that I'm superior or that there's a chair in between us. That's just because Ms. Hart's not here tonight. I just want to be able to see everybody at once. Okay, any other questions?
No, could I just highlight one box I think would be really good for all of us?
You may do so.
Under consideration would be box number 41.
Okay,
Seek recognition before speaking. That was something that I will now continue to do. And then the no sidebar conversations or whispering, I think that's very important as we continue moving forward.
correct. And as council, I have noticed that typically we do very well with that. Every once in a while, something's going to come up. Maybe somebody says, what page are we on, or where is this information? But that's typically what it's limited to. And my experience with council have done an amazing job with that. Every once in a while, something slips because we are human. But for the most part, it's just asking for clarification or where to find the information that we're at. That's at least been my experience. So.
Okay. And that was it. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Again, if you find me behaving out of order, either speak to me after the meeting, or if it's a point of order, don't be shy about speaking up, because I recognize that I do occasionally make mistakes. You know, I constantly joke with my wife. I've been married to her for almost 40 years. We've got 4 daughters. I am told I'm wrong quite a lot, and I've learned to deal with that particular situation. So we're good there. All right. The next item is our review of council meeting and procedure. Does everybody have a copy of that? Or is that going to be up on the screen?
I didn't provide, I think the item was to discuss the workshop before a regular meeting, I believe.
Right. Okay. So I would encourage you, though, if you get a chance to take a look at the city council rules of procedure, there's some things in there. There's a couple of things that we do differently from Robert's rules, but Ms. Frausto a couple of weeks ago had a question about council meeting procedure, and we wanted to talk about it at the workshop. And obviously, because of the importance of this training, it was pushed back to another meeting. However, the rules committee met and have discussed a number of things. And one of the things that what I would like for council to think about, we're not going to make a decision tonight, obviously. I just want this to roll around in your mind for a little while and think about it. And Ms. Frausto asked the question, and make sure I get this one right, that you wanted to see if we could get public comment before each vote on the active agenda. Did I understand that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And there are a number of reasons why that complicates things. And so I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks and think of different solutions, and nothing that I thought of really resonated well with me. And then when we were at a rules committee meeting, Ms. Alba informed us that she and Ms. Horner had come up with an interesting solution. And initially I wasn't real nuts about it. I don't know if you could tell that, but it's got a lot of merit. And the idea is this: if you've ever seen a city council meeting from Mabton, they have ahead of every regular meeting, another meeting. So let's say our meeting started at 6:30. This may start at 5:30, just as an example. And at that 5:30 meeting, they have what's called a study session where they talk about all of the information that's going to be on the agenda for the regular meeting. So Public Works has something on there. This is where Mr. Sanchez would come in and would explain to us what his plan is, why this is a good idea, present the information. We would be able to ask questions, discuss. get things clarified. We go through each item on there and then we go into our regular meeting afterwards. The advantage is this is also an open public meeting. The public could be there. Many times during the public questions and comments, their questions and concerns would be answered if they were to stay through the entire meeting. Or sometimes our discussion raises questions that they may have. They're there for that early meeting. And then we go into our regular meeting. It's a separate meeting. We open, we close the same way. However, we have just had explained to us by staff everything we need to know for each of these points. And the public sitting out here has had the opportunity to listen. And now they've got their 3 minutes of public comment. I would like to comment on point number X. As I listen to this, I have a concern right here. I would like to say that I'm not in favor. I am in favor, whatever their position is on that. That gives them an opportunity to speak. Yet we're not having public comment before every vote. My concern with public comment before every vote is essentially we have an 8th council member who doesn't vote and adds to the debate. And so that's a little bit concerning. This gives the public an opportunity to make their comments, ask questions, perhaps get them answered, or they can meet with us in between meetings, catch us real quick if there's time. And you know, that's, and you might want to go into a little more detail, Ms. Alba, because you were the one who proposed it and had it all thought out. So fill in the gaps.
Well, this is a common way that a lot of smaller cities, which we're not tiny. I mean, we're not a little tiny city, but we are, you know, not Seattle, city of Seattle. We are, you know, experiencing a few growing pains, I believe. And I think some of that is with the public maybe not understanding a topic or just reading it on the agenda and maybe not understanding it. I think by having the 5:30 workshop, it does allow the citizens to hear what staff and council has to say about it. And a lot of times I think their questions will be answered before they come up for public comment. Or it may, like the mayor said, may raise more questions and then they can voice their concern or voice their opinion in favor, however it is that they feel. And again, if you watch City of Mapton, City of Grandview, and City of Granger, they all use this procedure and it makes their actual council meeting much more efficient. Because the way it works now is a lot of times we're at a workshop on a Monday, the first Monday, and we're giving you, let's give you an example. We're going to present you the water system plan. And so Mr. Sanchez is going to go through the entire system plan with you. And we may have our engineers here, they'll talk, and then we'll put it on the next agenda a week later. A week later, we then go through that same information all over again. And it becomes redundant. And also is not a waste of time, but it does take more time from our engineer, costs us more money. In this circumstance, they would appear at the workshop before and do the presentation, and then you would immediately get to vote on that. We would skip over the staff comment period. You would be able to, you know, make your motion and then have your debate. We wouldn't change any of that. That would still be a part of the process, but you would find that things will move a lot faster because we're not repeating ourselves over and over. And I think that just have everything fresh in your mind on what was discussed at the workshop would be so much easier. So, you know, that was kind of, you know, really honestly, we had to do a lot of brainstorming on what works. And Jameson and I sat down and I said, well, you know, Grandview really works because you know, I used to work there. And she goes, well, Mapton really works. I used to work there. And so we really sat down and discussed, you know, what were the differences. And we really saw that just having things fresh in your mind after a discussion is much easier to go through and cast your vote. So that was our take on it as the staff's position. And the other thing that I would say also is if we do have to call a special meeting, we could leave that first Monday as one of those things. If we had special things we needed, we could say, okay, we do have something special we need to bring forward and it's X, Y, and Z. And then that would be our, you know, kind of out as that special meeting date.
And I envision that will probably happen, especially during budget season. So, but anyway, think about that. Ask questions. Ms. Horner and Ms. Alba are resident experts on this and have seen it in action. So please feel free to ask them questions, make comments, make suggestions to modify it. This is obviously not a done deal. And trying to find solutions that work for everybody. I think the comment was we wanted to be more transparent and more open to the public, and this certainly is, that's the intention of this. And so if there's ways that it can be improved on, absolutely comment on that. And if council likes it, we can make some changes. Just because we've done it this way for many years does not mean that we have to keep doing it the same way forever. So if something's going to work better, let's change it up.
Councilor Beeler had a question.
Councilor Beeler, did you have a question?
You kind of answered my question. That would mean we wouldn't have the workshops anymore unless
Correct.
it's something special.
Correct.
But we'd have double meetings.
Our meetings would start, I think, we'd start at 5:30, for example. And that part would probably take the full allotted time. But our regular council meetings, because we've just had the discussion, you could breeze right through that because, yeah. So.
That's all I have.
All right. Other questions? Ms. Hart, any questions?
Citizens, oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry. How would you let the citizens know that it would start at 5:30?
We would have to do an awful lot of publicity.
Yeah,
It would require us to get that news out to people from every platform we've got available.
that would be important.
Mhm. And then people who don't see it on those platforms are gonna have to rely on other people to tell them. So we need to be really, it'd go out in the water bill. It would go out whatever way we can think of to make that happen.
Okay,
We can put the information out there. We can't force the people to read it.
yeah.
That's the only.
Mm.
All right, I do want to remind you all to sign these documents that you might have. Because you have been trained, so
And then do we hand them down?
we make sure that the clerk gets them before we go home.
I had a comment or
Yes.
maybe a suggestion. I know that I've been bringing up the translation services and I think that was gonna go to the planning committee or was the
We are
rules?
meeting Monday.
Okay, about that.
Public safety, yes.
In the case that this, that we vote on it and we institute this, which I think is great, by the way. The goal would be to get more public, and I think the expectation would be to get more public here. So I think with doing this, we would expect more community members to come out and would probably be needing, most likely actually be needing the translation services more so now than
Correct. And
before, so.
I know that our clerk has done an amazing job of getting all the information published in both English and Spanish. Ironically, the Spanish is showing up in my Facebook sooner than the English is. So I find that personally just kind of ironically funny, but it is out there. I see it on the webpage. I see it all over.
Yeah, and that's great,
So
yeah.
that's good.
I'll make one comment.
Managers.
We are hosting the event on February 15th for Small Business Workshop. And for interpreter services for just that one small meeting is almost $2,000. So it's very cost prohibitive for us to do it. And so we are looking at ways for it to not cost us as much. If we had, we're basically saying for city council meetings, if we were to hire the same service, it'd be $4,000 a month we'd have to invest in for just those two meetings. So we've got to find a solution that is not going to cost us that much. So that's really where we're at with it right now.
Okay. Thank you.
I think there are answers out there, but it's just, we haven't found it yet. Ms. Ripley?
Has any other councils ran into this,
I know Yakima does it.
Yakima does it?
Mhm.
Honestly, I haven't looked into that. So, but we can.
That'd be something to look into.
And a good interpreting service is worth its weight, I suppose, because being an interpreter in a live meeting is incredibly difficult. I've done it before. I've been an interpreter for a week, going both directions, and was absolutely fried afterwards. And I know as our clerk who tried to interpret during one of our meetings, kind of just off the cuff without any prior warning, and found it difficult. It was a challenge, and she is very bilingual. So it's not just something you step up and do a minute. It's something that you better have some background in it, and it's work.
And the public has to be well versed in making a pause after they make a statement, because that's one of the issues when you have someone that is very long-winded and speaks, even like right now, me speaking, if we were being translated, I would have had to pause at one point, even in this dialogue, because they wouldn't have been able to keep up with me. in a different language. So that's something we will have to train our staff and, council, and then obviously citizens on taking that pause. So the translator's able to catch up.
I have interpreted for pastors before. They don't take a breath. It's brutal. We had one where I was in Nicaragua interpreting, and he used very high and exalted language, kind of archaic language, and local Spanish classes don't teach that language. And I had to make a lot of stuff up as I went and trying to learn these different grammatical structures that I wasn't familiar with. And yeah, that can be a challenge. So we want somebody who's capable of doing it well. So, all right. So, our next agenda item is an executive session. Is there any objections taken as just a quick break? And I think, is staff going to be here for that, or?
We'll have Lucia and Chief Lehman, and then Jameson Horner will be.
Okay. So
So
any objection to a quick recess? So how much time are you going to need to get everything set up? Couple minutes? 5 minutes?
I can do it without a recess if you want.
I need a recess. We've been sitting for over an hour. It's already 8 o'clock. So let's take 5 minutes and reconvene.
Moment, it's live streaming, recording is back on.
Okay, we're back in session. Council will be going into executive session. Predicted time is 45 minutes pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, parentheses 1, parentheses II, litigation that the agency reasonably believes may be commenced by or against the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity. No action is expected. All right, and
I'm gonna stop.
all right, we are back in open session. Council's finished its executive session. No action will be taken. Next item, upcoming council meetings. And we'll turn that over to our clerk. All right, it appears we will have the regular type of items that we will have on a regular meeting, but there's nothing specific assigned to that meeting. I can guarantee that will change. Council members, if you have anything that needs to be brought up for the agenda, please make sure that gets to the clerk or manager as soon as possible.
which would be Wednesday by 5.
That is as soon as possible. Yes, sir.
It's not something on the agenda, but have we scheduled a rules committee? Are we meeting again?
We have not scheduled that yet, so we can do that after the meeting. Okay. So yeah, thus far the regular meetings are unpopulated, but rest assured that will change. But again, you do have input, so please feel free to do that. All right. There being no further business to come before council and without objection, meeting is adjourned at 9:03 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Nicely done.
And for the record, no